The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Hice, is now recognized.
The cat out of the bag himself. He stated very clearly that what this is all about is unfinished Democratic business. That's exactly what this is all about. The Democratic Party attempting a political power grab of obtaining more senators. That's entirely what this is all about. And my comments that he referenced have nothing to do with a new test for admission. They're based on reality. If DC became a state, it'd be the only state that has no airport. If there's a car dealership in DC, I apologize for being wrong. I have no idea where it is, but it'd be a state without a capital city. It would not have a landfill, and we could find a ton of other issues that are just matters of fact that would be absent here. Mayor Bowser, let me ask you, is DC statehood a bipartisan issue in your opinion? Please turn your mic on.
I'm sorry, Congressman. My response was it should be. We never couched the issue of DC
That's a good answer, but it's not the question.
Okay.
Would you consider it a bipartisan issue?
It is a bipartisan issue, and here's why.
What Republicans do you know that support it?
Oh, I'm quite sure there are Republicans who support it. Perhaps not in this Congress.
That's not my question again.
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
Let me go to Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith, let me ask you, in the past, when other states have been admitted, this whole concern that many have that this is about Democratic senators, in the past when states have been admitted, isn't it true that most of the time, if not all the time, they were admitted in pairs?
That's certainly been the practice for the 20th century. Alaska and Hawaii came in as a pair. Also, Arizona and New Mexico came in as a pair as well. And even prior to that, states would often come in pairs or groupings in order to balance partisan considerations.
But isn't it also
How is that balance? Describe the balance.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear your question, Congressman.
Yeah, Mr. Smith, when you say to balance, what do you mean?
That political considerations have always been a part of admitting new states to our union. And so when the states have been admitted in pairs, it has traditionally been in part to balance those political considerations. And so there would typically be a pairing of a presumed state of one party with a presumed state of another party.
So there was an attempt in the past then to avoid a potential party getting the upper hand on another party. And so when we admitted states, we did it in pairs with both sides coming in at the same time. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. But I think it's important to note as well, none of those other states faced the significant constitutional issues that the district faces in coming in as a state by simple legislation.
Yeah, I get that. Mayor Bowser, are you aware of any movement afoot that would create a state to counterbalance DC?
Congressman, we don't accept the notion that our enfranchisement is dependent on anybody else or the readiness of any other jurisdiction.
I'm not interested in what your assumptions are. I ask you, are you aware of any other movement afoot for another state to be admitted that would be a counter to DC?
I'm not sure if this Congress has any other bills like H.R. 51 and the D.C. Admissions Act. We are, of course, familiar with this.
I can tell you there's not. There's not. Let me ask you this.
If I just may finish, Congressman, I want to completely answer your question. I am aware.
You completely answered my question, so please don't continue. If there was another movement to admit another state, would you be in favor of that? If there was a union pair, would you be in favor of it?
I can only answer your question this way, Congressman. The people of Washington, D.C. have voted to endorse statehood. We have approved a constitution. We have approved our state boundaries. Our Congresswoman has introduced a bill that has a historic number of sponsors. In this committee should advance that bill to approval in the House of Representatives.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser, but that's again a great question. All due respect, a great answer to the question that I did not ask. DC residents have been voting in presidential elections since 1961. There have been, at least 15 presidential elections since that time until now. The most that any Republican president has ever received over that period of time is 20% coming out of Washington, D.C. And that 20% was when the Republican president won with 520 electoral votes. And yet D.C., the most ever, voted Republican 20% in that election, clearly out of step with America. And that combined with the fact that our history as a nation admits states that are paired together so it does not throw off balance the political structure of our country.
Well, Congress,
Mr. Smith, let me just finish with you. Can you briefly explain, Mr. Smith, why adding a state to the union for the sole purpose of gaining political advantage, as seems to be the case here, is not the intention of our structure and why it's potentially dangerous?
This is, the gentleman's time has expired. The gentlelady, the Honorable Bowser, can answer the question.
thank you.
What about the one I addressed the question to,
To
Madam
Mr.
Chair?
Smith? Was to Mr. Smith? Okay.
Thank you.
You can answer the question.
Yes, Congressman. I think admitting the District of Columbia in this way sets a dangerous precedent because of the many constitutional issues that are unique to the district. It's certain that years of litigation would follow this decision. Potentially every act of the new state and of the federal government during that time period before these issues are resolved could be called into question. And certainly if the 23rd Amendment issue is not resolved before a future presidential election, even that presidential election could itself be called into question.